So, I am so delighted to be introducing our next keynote because it's a dream come true for me. Aww. Dan and I have been talking for years now. We're not going to put a number on that, but we never met in person. So the conference makes things come true, I tell you. So Dan Harris is professor in the School of Education and director of Creative Agency Research Lab. And I do highly recommend that you look into the Creative Agency Lab because it is bubbling with excitement. It is, it's another PSN in many ways, and we're kind of connected like that. Dan is editor of the book series Creativity, Education, and the Arts with Palgrave, again, one of our wonderful supporters, and has authored, co-authored, or edited 22 books and over 150 chapters and articles, as well as plays, film, and spoken word performances. So we're really in for a treat. The research focuses on creativity studies, cultural, sexual, and gender diversities, and on performance and activism, all the fantastic things we're talking about. And Dan, I'm delighted, and the floor is yours.
Wow. Thanks, Vlad. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Day 3. You pumped? I want to start by saying thanks to Vlad and Constance and Wendy for having me. I've been trying to get here for the previous 4 years, and it's just great to finally have made it. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to my lovely partner in life and assistant in this presentation for doing the slides for this. Okay. Transing the nighttime of this white-collar crime time, we ricochet like pinballs bouncing between the hateful bait that leaders and lowlifes, fascists and fixers all want us to swallow. It sticks like a stone in our throats. We wallow in rage fatigue, swallow their Ivy League gold-wrapped rotten meat bodies. We can smell the stink from here. We see their intent launch well-meaning dissent, but it's going to take a lot more than that to save us this time. Love is the only antidote, and unity the only answer to fear. See, queer folks have been transing this kind of shit since 2400 BC. They never stop coming with their Frankenstein drumming. They hate nothing more than to see the joy in our weary queer bones, the glee in our feisty trans bodies. Think of us like those Bronze Age drawings to be found 5,000 years from now by some tender young outlier hoping against hope for love in a new evil empire. Surrounded again by danger, uncertain of strangers, hoping just for a sign, something to say to them, we never stopped. You are enough. Love is still here, queerly riding the world in its orbit, the wind in its song forever, however long it takes to make us truly great again. Transing, the verb, is not a new idea. 17 years and a lifetime ago, Susan Stryker, Paisley Curra, and Lisa Jean Moore brought views on the matter of transing together in their special issue of Women's Studies Quarterly. They defined the term transing as a temporality of trans, a spatiality of gender. We felt, they said, that the time was ripe for bursting transgender wide open. 17 years ago. And linking the questions of space and movement that term implies to other critical crossings of categorical territories. Great alliteration as well. Critical crossings of categorical territories. Not a bad first shot at a transing theoretic, which is what I'm going to propose today. They called genders potentially porous and permeable spatial territories, each capable of supporting rich and rapidly proliferating ecologies of embodied difference. We've been talking about ecologies here for the last 2 days. Transing, they said, like gender itself, is a relational process. a rehearsal for possibility in the present. Possibility in the present. Not the queer futurity, I would assert, that Jose Munoz spoke of, but a possibility in the now. Not a future that might or should never come. So much promise. Classic Stryker, lifeboating me in those dark and choppy tidal wave days. The us-them binary has never been so riptide. How can transing help us wayfind in these times? Because God knows we need help. Don't get me wrong, I love the dramatic and unexpected. Somehow change is always surprising, right? No matter how long you've been doing it, it's just not just the changing, it's the perception of change, right? You know when you're around someone all the time and you don't notice them changing, and then someone who hasn't seen them for ages sees them for the first time in a long time and completely freaks out? Oh my God, you look so different. They say it's a matter of perspective. I'm asserting a perspective of the viewer. The eye, as it were, of the beholder. So is that a question of space or time or relationality? Time passing with enough space to avoid observation? Perhaps. A trans equation for our times, a formula for moving through, for transing each nightmare. But are we taking notice? How might transing as a verb be an invitation into a more speculative way of living, an antithesis to capitalism, to the culture of acquisition and achievement more broadly? Can transing help us map a space, a relationship, rather than a line from here to there? It seems to me that in Western culture we have a fantasy of the two, a destination fetish. We need to get there. You need to establish yourself. They have arrived. So premise one for today: might a trans theoretic offer new possibilities to all of us trudging under the yoke of capitalism? Can transing be a moving through, a rejection of the two? We are all lichens. Gilbert Sage and Sapp and Tauber argued that all organisms are like lichens. I love this. The symbiotic merger of a fungus and photosynthetic bacteria or algae. In a piece called The Queerness of Lichens, chemistry scholar David Griffith extended their claim to say, we have never been individuals. The queer multiplicity of life goes about cobbling itself together, producing and reproducing organisms and ecological relationships, like this one, like PSN. Lichens are places where an organism unravels into an ecosystem and where an ecosystem congeals into an organism. And I offered you today that that's partly what I see PSN doing with us. Individuals are all diversities of co-evolving associates. And Griffith calls us to rethink the human body as a lichen-like ecological mesh. Lichen-like ecological mesh, sort of like the tree. Okay, biologist Sharon Kinsman. Shouldn't a fish whose gonads can be first male, then female, help us to determine what constitutes male and female? So sticking with the nature and ecological theme here, there's so many examples for us to draw from. She says, shouldn't an aphid, fundatrix, a stem mother, inform our ideas about what a mother is? She there on the rose bush, she neatly copies herself, depositing minuscule, sap-siphoning, genetically identical daughters. Aphids might lead us to ask not why do they clone, but why don't we? And Karen Barad, of course, has been writing extensively about the queerness of nature now for over 15 years. The evidence abounds, I guess, is what I'm saying, if only we allow ourselves to see or choose to see. But Darwinism popularized the idea of autonomous individual agents. Autonomous individual agents in competition with one another as the driving force of evolution. It was a theory, an assertion. He ignored ample evidence to the contrary, and others followed suit. But more contemporary scholars, including Gilbert Sapentauber, continued to correct this claim, arguing instead that the emergence of an ecological perspective on evolution, which was emerged and became popularized in the second half of the 19th century, was a turning point, or could be a turning point if we choose to embrace it. They argue instead that the ecological systems and relationships between individual actants encompass all relationships between organisms, and this is the important part, at all scales. We are always in relationship with the other organisms with whom we coexist at all scales. Are we taking notice? They argued this in the second half of the 19th century. Then, over 50 years ago in 1970, Shulasmith Firestone wrote, "No matter how many levels of consciousness one reaches, the problem always goes deeper. It is everywhere," she said. Feminists have to question not just all of Western culture, but the organization of culture itself and even the very organization of nature. 50 years ago, 55 years ago. Her ideas prefigured cyberfeminism, ecofeminisms, feminist new materialisms, and so much more. 55 years ago. So, an already long history of a trans-infused theoretic for rejecting individualism, human exceptionalism, and moving us toward awareness of our ecological nature, possibilities for what I believe is a group liberation. But are we taking notice? These scholars may be reminding you of Donna Haraway. Her transgenic creatures, just one of her salient concepts that we've taken up, many of us, carry genes from so-called unrelated organisms, an idea that both fits the Darwinian evolutionary stories, but also rejects dominant discourses of the natural limits of nature. As Haraway has taught us so many times over, what was distant and unrelated becomes intimate when you look at the world that way. We are, she says, none of us alone. No either or, no us, them, no binaries, no dualities. We are already intimately one. Knowledge that our First Nations brothers and sisters seem to know so well. But are we taking notice? So, premise 2. Can a trans theoretic redirect us from individualist, capitalist isolation and remind us of our natural collectivity, the trans nature of nature, a like-and-like ecological mesh of co-evolving associates? So it's one thing to agree with a non-binary transing theoretic in principle. Seems to make sense. But how can that translate into a moving in and through a world which we all know and has been talked about a lot in the last few days, in which gender is still constantly deployed as a tool of power relations? How do we do it in context? Susan Stryker says, what if we conceptualize gender as a set of practices through which a certain kind of labor or utility is extracted? And that's really important because she's setting it in the context of capitalist patriarchal society. And I'm going to argue today that that is exactly what Donald Trump and his henchmen are doing right now. Extracting labor and utility. He doesn't care about trans people. He doesn't care about migrants or women's autonomy. I doubt Donald has ever thought about a trans person before in his life. We are, in the very best possible way, inconsequential to him. But there is utility in us. We're a lever for recruiting supporters who he wants to cultivate, harness, and control. He's the king of the binaries, the emperor of dualistic thought. Forget about logic, reason, the Enlightenment. He likes to talk about science, right? Supposedly. And we know the Enlightenment promoted logic and scientific reasoning, while the counter-Enlightenment preferred the sensual, instinctual, and emotional. Populism isn't based on those Enlightenment ideals, as he would have us believe, but on the others he claims to reject: emotion, instinct, superstition, and irrational fear. We can all see how good, though, Trump is at deploying calls to faith, fanaticism, and paranoia, all the while telling us he's championing logic, empiricism, and scientific reasoning. But are we paying attention? He is, in so many ways, the us-them binary in action. A few years ago, January Littlejohn and her husband discovered that their daughter's school had secretly socially transitioned their 13-year-old little girl. Teachers and administrators conspired to deceive January and her husband while encouraging her daughter to use a new name and pronouns. They, them pronouns, actually. All without telling January, who is here tonight and is now a courageous advocate against this form of child abuse. January, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, January. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. January, thank you. Stories like this are why, shortly after taking office, I signed an executive order banning public schools from indoctrinating our children with transgender ideology. I also signed an order to cut off all taxpayer funding to any institution that engages in the sexual mutilation of children. And now I want Congress to pass a bill permanently banning and criminalizing sex changes on children and forever ending the lie that any child is trapped in the wrong body. This is a big lie. A big lie. Transgender rights, human rights, what a lie. We don't want it. And our message to every child in America is, you are perfect exactly the way God made you. And we're getting wokeness out of our schools too, and out of our military. And it's already out. It's out. It's out of society, and we don't want it, do we? We don't want it. So just listen to some of this appalling waste we've already identified. $8 million to promote LGBTAQLZ+ in the African nation of Lesotho, which, by the way, nobody has ever heard of. $8 million for making mice transgender. This is real. This is real. And wokeness? Wokeness is trouble. Wokeness is bad. Wokeness is gone. It's gone. And we feel so much better for it, don't we? Don't we feel better? Well, I feel better. Thank you. Thank you all. Performance scholar Stephanie Milona writes, I intend to offer you a transdisciplinary experiment of performing the trans. Performing the trans. In short, transing is to change as multiplicity. Multiplicity. Transperforming refers to overcoming or passing through or going beyond. Not a binary, not from here to there. So here I am. Today, in my body, going beyond, before you. Am I passing through? Aren't we all? You are moving across the room, transing like Jagger, not so much a to and fro from here to eternity, just moving as in a little soft shoe, a little shuffle off to you. Are pouring out of the jar, out of the house, out of your mind. Trans rage is on the move again in your particular collection of cells. Not so much a Martha P. Johnson kind of up on the stage kind of more like a vector to freedom, rehearsing a future in which Munoz maybe got it right, got it now, got it a little bit closer at least, or for longer. Silence equals what these days? It still equals death. What is there left to say when people die and rights roll back and everything now and always was retractable? If everywhere is bombable, where is the love? It's hard to believe that it was only 16 years ago that Munoz famously declared, queerness is essentially a rejection of a here and now and an insistence on potentiality for another world. And I love him for that, I do. We've all continued to turn back to him time and time again. But lately, that potentiality seems further away than ever. And queerness seems more commodified than at least I ever could have imagined when I was young. But transing for this moment in time might just offer us something more urgent and necessary and tangible than a potentiality that might or should never come. Transing might show us how to move without arriving, to rediscover our collectivity rather than our otherness, and to remember our pasts, time, space, unity. Trans possibility is not just about a future, it's an accumulation of pasts, a repetition of acts in relation. Transing might show us how to move as a state of adaptation, evolution, and becoming, rather than arriving. Okay. I'm a girl who has short pink hair and wears trousers. And I've been asked so many times about whether I'm transitioning and what pronouns I'd prefer to be referred to with, whereas none of my gender-conforming friends get this treatment. I feel like this is really important, a really important point to make. How my generation supports the rigid, regressive stereotypes of what a boy or girl should be. It's like we've suddenly gone back 50 years. And once again, being a woman is nothing more than a pretty dress, sparkly high heels, a pronounced liking for sewing, and a preference for Barbie, a pink brain. They're reinforcing the binary that they try so hard to destroy. They're fitting each person in a little pink or blue box depending on their personality and preferences, regardless of biology. The kids at school actually equate femininity as being female and masculinity as literally being male. According to them, there's no such thing as a girl who has short hair and wears trousers and likes video games. She's got to be a boy. They value regressive sexist stereotypes over the biological reality of sex. You'd expect schools to be a place of education, but nowadays it's like indoctrination. I am a 14-year-old girl, and this is my testimony on the infiltration of gender ideology in schools, including mine. It started right away in year 7. As part of our PSHE lessons, we had to write a pledge to LGBTQIA plus students and watch a video in class about what and what not to say to LGBTIQA plus people. After that, we had another lesson in which the word butch was labeled as derogatory and a transphobic slur, even though it's a word used to describe a masculine lesbian. I mean, it's a slur. It's not a slur and has nothing to do with being transphobic. This year, I'm in year 10. We had another assembly which also denounced the word butch as a slur. This time, I had the confidence to talk to a teacher about it, who quickly dismissed my concerns and simply said they were just following the county council's guidance. I heard from a friend after that she'd been attending a lunchtime club called Equalities. So I got added to the equalities group chat. And somehow, it's even worse than I thought. There were 900 plus messages about watching pornography and smoking weed, links to fanfic and Harry Potter porn, sexually explicit photos of mannequins. You don't even get that one. And more. This is a group chat for a club officially organized and recognized at school, and there have been teachers recommending it to year 8 kids, 12 and 13-year-olds. The group chat is an unsupervised free-for-all, and there's zero safeguarding measures in place, and rarely any teachers are present at the lunchtime meetings either. The first and only time I attended, I want you to know, I only stayed for around 30 seconds before hastily exiting. When I entered, all the children attending were going around stating their pronouns like they, them, as some kids said, and sexuality like aro, ace, and pansexual, encouraged by the teachers. I think it's clear that a club that has young children state who they like to have sex with raises some serious safeguarding concerns. The social transition that my school is supposedly helping children with places them on a path to life-altering drugs and irreversible surgeries that will disfigure their bodies permanently. You need to take notice. Is the author of this online UK article really a 14-year-old self-identified girl? There was a lot of debate about that in the comments section. In my mind, I imagine the child's mother, full of emotion, sitting at a desk in the late afternoon sun and thinking about all the unresolved pain from her own childhood and adolescence. Yet in some surprising ways, the author of this letter, to me, has a better, more complex understanding of gender than many. She problematizes the relationship between sex and gender, biology, and performativity. These insights, just for a start, let me imagine her as an educated person who has spent considerable time thinking about sex and gender, possibly even her own. But all of that hasn't stopped her from shutting down her own or her child's or other children's possibilities for gender and sexual happiness, freedom, and finding community. Some people want to talk about post this and new that, but reducing these magnificent bodies to such simple beginning, middle, and endness is to doom ourselves to repeating mistakes. Our naive addiction to endlessly starting again and again and again. I mean, why would a feeling, a movement, a discipline, for that matter, ever be over? Why deny the recycled nature of energy, light, all forms of life, living endlessly through reformation, rearticulation, and reassembly, the both and of transing, the queerness of time? Survivors of trauma know there is no after. Not really. Artists and activists know that the seduction of new is just a tool for traitors and fools. See, trans queering is really just upcycling when you get right down to it. The infinite us that once seemed enlightening, we all emerged, all of us, from infinite possibility. Queer is really just versatility. So, transing this nighttime of hate, I tell you, we have been here before. We know what to do. We use our resilience to paint worlds of brilliance, something like, I don't know, a queer kid lies on their denim jacket back in a sun-drenched buzzfly field. Dandelions blowing into ghosts off their stems, clouds of the ancestors float overhead, calling them out and away. Crickets and critters keep you company in that tall grass, singing a song of someday. Behind dream-closed eyes, seeing others like you in your mind. But we're here. We will always be here. This is our victory. This is our pact. Just us. To trans this nightmare from it just is to justice. With love and more love and always more love. Thank you. Thanks, Stacy. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan.
Thanks.
Questions?